Hello and welcome to the Whole Energy Body Balance podcast, where we explore all kinds of possibilities, practices, and ideas that bring greater healing, connection, and harmony to pets, to people, to horses, and hopefully to the planet. We aim to inspire you, to challenge you in a beautiful way, and hopefully get you creating positive changes and healing in your life and in the lives of the beings that you care for. And if you're interested in healing and making the world a better place, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Dr. Edward, the Healing Vet, and I help deeply caring people, pets, and horses unfold profound healing and healthy relationships through somatic awareness, loving therapeutic touch, intuitive perception, kind training, and energy work. I also practice as a holistic veterinarian and healer all over the world. And today, I would like to introduce you to our speaker, Ruth Hatten, who is a animal naturopath, nutritionist, herbalist, and energy worker. She's very dedicated to enhancing the well-being of animals through natural and holistic methods. So, Ruth, I'm really excited to have you on our rebooted version of the podcast here for Whole Energy Body Balance. Welcome.
Me too. Thank you. Thank you. You know, we did this ages ago on Facebook, like 5, 7, 8 years ago. I don't know if you remember, we did a Facebook Live on your Facebook. Yeah. And it was so interesting and funny and amusing to like watch us back then. Or me mostly. Hilarious.
Yeah, we've all grown a bit since then, hey? So with the podcast, we start off with a big question because big questions are a good thing in life, I reckon. So who are you? Why do you do what you do? And how did you get to this point in your life?
Good question. And for the audience, I have not been given this question in advance. So this is really just me, no preparation.
Do that.
So I'm just going to let it roll. So who am I? Let's start with that. Who am I? And how did I get here? So, for me, the biggest thing about me and the biggest thing that really centers me and focuses me and grounds me and the reason for my existence is animals. And so they take up the biggest place, the biggest space in my heart. And I haven't always worked in a field relating to animals. I was a lawyer for 17 years working in like the commercial corporate sector, mostly construction. And, there were no animals. And then I started to just kind of like, I guess my soul started to speak to me. And I, came across animal law and it was really new back then. There really wasn't much of it in Australia. It was big in the US, but I found out about it. I learned about it. I ended up becoming an animal lawyer. And then that really got me to get the feel for, oh my God, my career, my work that I do, it has to focus around animals. And so I actually went back to the normal legal. I left that job and I came back to Brisbane and went back into the old kind of legal world that I was in. I was like, I cannot do this till the end of my days. And so long story short, I decided to become an animal naturopath, and then the energy work came in as well, and that's always expanding. But it all comes back to that core value, that core essence of who I am in my heart, which is all about the animals. And, things have morphed and changed as they do over the years, but that's essentially, everything revolves around the animals for me.
Beautiful.
So, does that answer your questions?
Well, the point of the question is to have a conversation. Wherever we go with this question, it's not important. It's important that we be communicating and connecting and exploring. That's what I like to do in these sessions is to, we theoretically have a topic, but goodness knows where we'll end up as well. And that's perfect. Yeah. So what is it about animals that is so inspiring for you, that is so rich and wonderful for you in your life?
Oh, they're just, they don't have the human ego, and they're just who they are. There's no lies, there's no deception. They're real. they maintain that really strong connection to nature and their true essence. They're not swayed by all the things that humans are swayed by. I have, I was going to say I have complete trust for them. That is the case for every animal except for dogs.
Oh, really?
No offense, dogs, because there was an episode a few years back in the space of like 6 months. I had attack or near attack incidents with dogs. And so it really kind of like, it made a big difference. And I'm much better now because I knew like the way the brain works, it set in place this kind of fear program as a safety mechanism to have that fear because I'd been attacked. And then I was like, okay, I need to wipe this. And so I knew that that was going to be wiped with positive experiences of dogs. And so mostly that has been wiped, but there is still sometimes particular dogs, if they're off lead or if they're loud and they're barking at me and it comes a bit, I still have that kind of like, are they going to attack me? So there's not that 100% trust because of that experience, right? Whereas I've never had a fear experience with a cat. I've only ever experienced love and, so, and the wild animals, well, they're, obviously I come across them. That's not true. There is some fear around snakes. I did stumble across a black-eyed, red-bellied black snake last year in the bush, and he was just there off the side of the path, and he was all coiled up with his head up, and he was just hissing at me, and I was like, oh my God. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. I'm going, because I know enough about, nature and wild that the snakes are more scared of us than we are of them. And so it was just honoring that I was in his environment, right? And I startled my vibrations as I was, big, heavy human walking along the earth, startled him. And so he reacts the way that he instinctually knows how. He was alerting me. It's not like he went for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd have to say that I've got a healthy respect for cats. I've been scratched and bitten by cats, and I've got a healthy respect for horses, and I've got a healthy respect for all animals because sometimes they can be dangerous if we're not listening, and if they've been traumatized in the past, or if they've we're compromising them in some way. But today,
don't get me wrong though, like, there is a healthy respect for all of them, but that doesn't mean that sometimes there's an element of fear. So it's kind of like on that piece of trust, it's like, I think trust is different to respect. Like, I love and adore all of them. Like, every single dog I see, I'm like, hello, but yeah, still.
So today we're going to be exploring the power of herbs. So you're a naturopath. You've got an extensive experience in the medicinal energetics and all of that kind of thing of herbs. So it's a big topic. Where do we start?
It is a massive topic. Where do we start? Well, I guess I would say when I think about the clients that I work with, and the first thing is really most people don't understand how herbs can be used to support animal well-being.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just not even, and you probably experience this as well in your work. Like, there's, in the modern way of doing things, it's all about drugs and prescription food, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like this mainstream approach to pet care. And so people know that herbs and plants exist, plants obviously, but there's still that kind of, oh, but are they safe? And how do I even use them? That's what I feel is like the first kind of thing that comes up for people. So we could start there.
Okay. Wherever you feel like is good to start, I think that's a good place. So lead on and inform us about herbs and the wonders of them and how they can help.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you look at, I mentioned before about, animals and their connection to nature. So it's very natural for them in the wild. And if we look over the history of animals, they have been self-medicating for years and years and years out in the wilds. And there's evidence, there's research that's been done, particularly around, the monkey families like the chimpanzees and the orangutans, and how they will eat a certain plant, and so the research, I don't know how they did this research, but the research reaches these conclusions that they chose this particular plant to help with parasite prevention, for example. I did write a blog. My memory's a bit hazy, but I have written a blog. There's a few blogs on my website around herbs and animals, and I do mention in more detail the particular research that they did and the findings, and I'm pretty sure I link through to the research. So if anyone wants to explore that a bit more and not just rely upon my hazy memory, there are those written resources available. But yeah, so there's evidence to show that animals self-medicate with plants. Like they're not just randomly eating plants. There is a cognizance and a selection, a mindful selection of those plants. Now obviously you can see in a domestic environment, you can have house plants and, there's not necessarily that discernment. They can eat toxic plants, right? Although I will say I have some considered toxic plants in my house. Like I have a big lily pilly in my house, but my cats have never shown interest in eating that. They've only ever shown interest in the plants that are non-toxic, which I find interesting, So there's a lot of fear around plants and animals, and I'm certainly not inviting people to go, oh, yes, fill your house with toxic plants, because I don't know what your pet's going to do in that situation. I know my pets and they're fine. Like I've never had a problem, but I can't, speak for other people's pets, right? So there is that kind of, yes, it's not like willy-nilly. Just because it's natural, it's safe, right? And so, with certain herbs, it comes down to the correct dosage. It also comes down to there are a number of herbs that can be toxic, right? So we need to have awareness around those plants. And like I said, it's not just willy-nilly, oh, it's a herb, it's natural, that's fine, I'll give it to my cat. Oh my God, now my cat's having a seizure or something, right? So vomiting excessively or I have to go to the vet. So there needs to be that awareness, that discernment around that just because something's natural doesn't mean it's safe. It's like you wouldn't go and just give your animal a drug without speaking to the vet about it. There's that certain aspect. I consider herbs to be safer than drugs, and they are technically still considered a drug. So let's do a contrast, a differentiating, using the word differentiate between the two. So you've got your pharmaceuticals, drugs, which is like your medicate. Well, no, even then herbs are medicine too, right? So let's just keep it as pharmaceuticals, right?
Yeah.
But then you could even say that herbs are pharmaceutical because they have pharmaceuticals. So, then we're just dealing with the English language, which is a mess, right? So we've got the natural herbs. They are they can be used as medicines, right? They can be used to treat particular ailments. And there's so much research around that as well. The more that humans have started to use herbs for their own health, as that interest has grown, there's been more and more research. There's plenty of veterinary herbal texts, right, that go into the research around the herbs with particular conditions, ailments, or from a naturopathic perspective, looking at, the herbs that support different organs, different bodily systems, right? So there is so much information, there's so much knowledge around the way that herbs work. But it's like anything, you can Google it, you're not necessarily going to get accurate or reliable information.
Yeah. Do you use herbs alongside, as a parallel treatment with vets who might be prescribing medications at the same time?
Yeah, so I've got a few cases. Often it comes up with severe anxiety cases and seizures. So they're where I've had most of the involvement with vets. So, and usually I will say to the client, because they've already gone to the vet and they come to me because they want to know what are their natural options. And obviously I need to know everything that they're on. If they're on medications, I need to know exactly what they're on. Because if we're going to do a herbal, I need to assess which herbs I can use. Because just like with, some herbs, and this goes into that not all herbs are safe, because it comes down to the individual animal. Is this herb safe for your animal? And so one of those factors is your animal on medicine? Pharmaceutical medicines that's been prescribed by the vet. What are those medicines? I've got the information that I will look at. There's what's called cautions and contraindications and drug interactions, right? So as a herbalist, I am looking at all of that. So when I'm making up a herbal remedy for a dog or for a cat or a horse or what have you, I make sure that I have that information, and I make sure that I know. I've got this massive spreadsheet that tells me everything. And I look at, what are the cautions and contraindications? Do any of those exist for this animal? Then I'm looking at the drug interactions. What medications are they on? Is that contraindicated with this particular herb? And usually the contraindication or the drug interaction is more that it will increase the effect of the drug. Sometimes which can be a good thing, because then that can mean you might be able to reduce the amount of that drug that you're giving your animal. But always you need to check that in with your prescribing vet, right? Yeah, and so that's when I say to the client, we can do this. We have some options. Like if your intention, because a lot of people come to me and they're like, I don't want my animal on these drugs. I'm like, well, if that is your intention, we need to work with your vet, because that gives me a broader scope in terms of what herbs we can use. But you need to communicate to this with your vet. And if you're not comfortable doing it, I'm happy to have a call with your vet and discuss it with them one-on-one. So there's none of that, breakdown in communication. And then, because it might be, because let's use, say, seizures, for example, right? So this is all about supporting the neurological system. And so there's a lot of herbs that have anti-seizure properties, antispasmodic, antispasmolytic, anticonvulsant. Research that has proven that they're effective with reducing the severity and or occurrence of seizures. So we can go all out and really go strong, not strong. I was going to say hit it hard, but that's not the word either. Use those herbs. But if that animal is on seizure medication, well, then it's like, this is probably going to increase the effect of those seizure medications. So if you don't want to do that, we're not going to use those herbs. If your idea is that you want to potentially see if you can stop those drugs or reduce the dose, let's work with the vet, and they know what we're doing, so they can advise you on when is appropriate time, if at all, to start to reduce the dose of the drug. But that's the vet that does that. So that's how they can be used in conjunction. But then they can also be used if we're like, okay, well, let's not use those. We don't have the vet on board, so you're not going to have that advice as we go. So let's leave those herbs out. What we can do instead is use herbs that don't have an interaction with that drug, that are going to support other aspects of your animal's health as well, and also to incorporate liver support, so that we can support the liver in eliminating the toxic residue of those drugs, especially with those seizure meds long-term, can have a big impact on the liver, as you would know.
Yeah, they're definitely phenobarbital and keppra and all those things are things that have to go through detox pathways in the liver, and they do have a toxic load. But vets, hey, not funnily enough, I'm being a little bit tongue-in-cheek here, funnily enough, not all vets are open to the idea of using herbs.
No. And I do say to the clients, look, there are plenty of vets out there who are open. I can give you a few names if you want to reach out, research them and see who you're comfortable with, because I think it's important for them to know that there are other options. There are vets out there who are open and who are willing to work with you, like yourself, using natural remedies, because at the end of the day, if that's going to be the best thing for your animal, then why not explore it? Do no harm, right?
Just taking a short little break from the actual podcast itself. Thanks so much for listening. I just wanted to let you know that I have a modality, whole energy body balance, that I've created over 28 years of working with all kinds of animals with all kinds of problems. And if you want to learn how to get your beautiful hands on your pets to find and heal their silent pain, anxiety and trauma, or if you would like to wake up your intuitive perception and learn how to use energy healing to find and heal all kinds of problems and distresses and traumas in your pet's energy systems, then pop into wholeenergybodybalance.com. We've got home and practitioner programs so you can learn either to help your pets or you can get certified and build a beautiful business out of playing with dogs and cats all day. It's a stack of fun. And now we'll head back to the podcast. Yeah. And it's a curious thing that I think vets get kind of boxed up in their training. I know I was when I first graduated.
For sure.
And I know that I'm perfectly happy with people using herbs and whatever. But the other thing I'd say to people is, it's okay for you to stand your vet up and say, yeah, well, my animal, this is what I want to do.
Exactly.
And that can lead to a little bit of healthy conflict with some vets, and some vets take it better than others. But I really think it's important that people advocate, even if it does upset their vet a little bit, because that's our job, isn't it, to look after our animals and really
say that too.
Take responsibility for how we're going to care for them,
Yeah, because it's so important. It's like you are your pet's guardian. They are so dependent upon you. It is your responsibility to do the absolute best that you can. And if that means that, you need to stand up and say, no, I don't want to do that, there has to be another option. And if you're not able to present me with those options, then there's other people I can go to. And it's not like a criticism, although there's, I know what vets are going through and what they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, but there are plenty of vets out there who have gone out and done additional training in natural fields of veterinary medicine. The courses are there, the information is there, and it's like if you want to if you're getting a lot of clients who want to explore those natural options, you don't want to lose their business. Well, then it says to me, so go and do some additional training. Open yourself up to this whole other world of medicine, because it's only going to grow, right?
Well, you'd hope so. So with herbs, how do you see? How do they work? What do they do? What are the benefits of herbs compared to perhaps a synthetically made prescription medicine? If you go to a deeper level of the kind of plant and the energetics and all that sort of thing, how do you understand that?
Yeah, so, first of all, you've got something that's synthetic, man-made, and something that's completely natural. In saying that, though, a lot of medicines, their core active ingredient is derived from a plant. But then they've added all the extra things and they've made that plant unnatural. They've created an unnatural product, even though it started off, or what they can do is replicate what that one of those active constituents of the plant does, and then they create a medicine around it, right?
Yeah.
You would know that. So first of all, you've got something that's man-made. You've got something that is artificial. What's the proper word? So it's chemical, but you have chemicals in nature too. There's chemicals in everything.
I suppose synthetic would be how
chemical.
I'd call it. Yeah, something that made, it's artificially created through chemical processes rather than naturally created through the chemical processes of life in a plant.
You've also, another difference between the two is the intelligence of Mother Nature. So there are these plants out there that most, if not all of them, will not, we don't know, right? So I would say most, if not all of them, based on my knowledge that currently exists, have medicinal components, have medicinal benefits, have health benefits. So it's not just about that plant is not important just because of one active constituent, one active part. There could be several active parts, and then there's all the inactive parts. And I'm going to use turmeric as an example because it's a well-known herb, mostly considered as a spice with human usage. You know, we add it to our food, and most people don't think, oh my God, I'm eating herbs, because it is. It's a powerfully medicinal herb, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, so good for the liver, so good for everything, right? Should be a staple for you and your animals, right? Because I also think there are some cautions and contraindications. So it's not 100% safe for everyone. So don't just go willy-nilly. And if you give too much turmeric, some animals can get diarrhea. And I've also had some animals that even at the right dosage, they react. So that's, you know, always that disclaimer. So if we look at turmeric, and most health conscious people know that the active constituent in turmeric, or the one that's considered the singular active constituent, is curcumin. And so that's why you see even in the natural world, you still get that thing of, oh, it's only the active that's important, right? And so that's why you see all those, there's so many curcumin supplements. And sometimes we need the curcumin.
That's kind of the whole Western reductionist kind of worldview too, which is
exactly
a bit at odds with a more holistic view of the wholeness of a thing and the entourage effect and all this other kind of. If people haven't heard of the entourage effect, I'm sure you can explain what that is.
Or synergy, right? Yeah. And so that's exactly right. So and that's one of the other aspects as well, and that's what I'm getting to in a very long-winded, roundabout way, is Mother Nature, the intelligence, the whole plant. So it's not just about the curcumin. There are other constituents in that plant that give turmeric its therapeutic effect, right? And so nature has devised this plant, you know, as a whole to support the body, right? So those active constituents, those inactive constituents work together to increase bioavailability, to increase absorption, to also there are other nutrient factors in those inactives that will help the active to, well, it comes back, it is that bioavailability to really open up and I'm not using any scientific words this morning because I'm like, you know, tired.
That's right. We can use them.
To open up and basically have a positive effect, right? So when you've got that synthetic man-made pharmaceutical medication or that supplement that's just curcumin, that's not the way nature intended for these plants to be consumed. They won't necessarily have as good an effect as when you're taking the whole plant, because of the synergy. One thing works to help the other. So one aspect of the plant will have a certain feature that then it's like the human body. That's probably a good way to show it, because we all are all bodies. We have all systems, you know, obviously between a human body or an animal body, the different systems with a plant body. But one part of the human body or the animal body does not stand alone. Everything is connected. When we eat some food or we take a herb or something, it goes in, you know, starts with the digestive system in our mouth. It goes down the esophagus. It goes down then, you know, it makes its way down into the stomach. I'm thinking of where things are situated within the body anatomy. Then the stomach down into the liver. The liver does things with it. Then it goes any waste or anything. It will process all of that, and off it shoots to where it needs to go within the body. Everything is connected, right? So everything is assimilated through all of the processes that exist within the body. It is the same with plants. So you cannot, or you can, but it's not accurate to compartmentalize because everything is connected. So the therapeutic aspect of the plant comes because of this holistic, this synergistic, this whole plant.
I hear you, and I'm so on the same page as you. I just pulled up a thing about turmeric, and it only 1 to 6% of the plant of the root is curcuminoid, so it's not even just curcumin. There's a whole host of similar kinds of things, and 34 essential oils, and a whole lot of other stuff that science probably hasn't even got to measuring yet in this simple little bright yellow, flavoursome, pungent root that we love to use in cooking, right?
Yeah, and you make a really good point there, and I'm glad you did it, because science is always changing. And I've had this debate with people my entire life. Oh, we have to rely on science, only the science matters. And I'm like, well, it matters, but it's not the be all and end all, because science is limited to what research has been done. There is so much we don't know. In part, if we want to rely upon the science, we may not know. There's a lot that we don't know because the science hasn't been done yet.
Oh,
when they eventually do the science, when eventually someone pays the money to a research lab to do the research, what about all these other constituents in turmeric? What do they do? Until that research is done, you're not going to convince those people that 100% rely upon science that it's more than just curcumin. It's not that it doesn't have any benefits. It's literally just because the money hasn't changed hands for that research to be done.
I hear you. So what's your favorite herb or herbs? I mean, for me, I reckon CBD, cannabis, whole plant extract rich in cannabis, whole plant cannabis extract rich in CBD would have to be my absolute favorite herbal medicine. But do you have any particular herbs or herbal medicines that are more important for you?
For me, it's more about just the ones that I'm attracted to. There are ones that I'm attracted to because of what they do, but it's more so about I just have this resonance. And that might sound a bit airy-fairy to some, because I imagine you're going to be you probably do have vets as part of it.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, people have particular herbs that some people like in their cooking and some people don't. I think exactly. that there are kind of, you talk about a resonance, but it also could be a physiological difference that means that your system is actually more in harmony with those particular herbs than other herbs. I think there's a whole lot of individual variation.
Yeah, totally. So for me, it always comes down to that very much. I love that plant because it does these things, but there's just something about this plant that I just really, 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 really love. So those plants are right at the top of the list. The one that always comes front of mind is dandelion.
Aha.
And one of the reasons is because dandelion's kind of like the underdog of the herb world. Like everyone just thinks it's a pesty weed because it just grows everywhere and it takes over everything. And it's like, yeah, but oh my God, it is so good for you. We have it in abundance. Like it's like a gift. I mean, they're all gifts from nature, right? But it's just like, here, take this beautiful liver supportive, gallbladder supportive, kidney supportive, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, herb. I'm gifting it to you. Use it. Like it's everywhere. It's in abundance. Use it, and it's also very, the flower of the dandelion, the beautiful bright yellow, like the power of the sun and the joy when you see, yellow is a very joyful color, right? So it also has, to me, when we're looking at more from a emotional and spiritual kind of perspective, it's like the symbolism of the plant for me is like joy and freedom, because it's like I will grow anywhere and you will never shut me down. Like, like it's just like power, and energy. I know energy. So let's bring in also the color of the yellow is the solar plexus chakra, and the solar plexus is, a liver is a big part of the solar plexus. The solar plexus is, one of the interpretations of it is the power center. I am worthy, I am strong, I am courageous. So we see that with the color of the yellow, like the color of the sun and the power of the sun, right? So, and then you've got when the seeds, the little dandelion wishes, and as a child, you blow them. So there's also that kind of beautiful aspect of dandelion that I love. So it's not just about the health benefits, it's also the symbolism of the plant.
Yeah, and I hear your whole voice and your being light up when you start talking about dandelion, which is super cool. And for me, I'm also thinking, well, for me, I think dandelion, there's a vitality. It does something beyond all the kind of medicinal things. It's got this vitality, like you say, it can grow anywhere. It's the first thing that pops up
Strong.
and provides bitter greens in spring. It's got a really vital life force to it. And, all you people out there, as long as you're in a place where things are not getting sprayed, you can, while you're on your walk, you can pick up some dandelion greens and you can mince them up and put them in your pet's food. And it's really, really helps support their vitality and has all sorts of other benefits as well. A lot of these things we forget.
Natural laxative, so it's a gentle laxative. It's not a harsh laxative. So it just helps to keep things moving. And that's part of, also that, it helps with the production of bile from the liver. So that's going to help with digestion of fats. Like, it's just an amazing, it's the plant that keeps on giving. And the more you read about it and the more you learn about it, the more you fall in, I did anyway, the more you fall in love with it, right? But just like you say as well, as long as it's not sprayed, but also never pick any herbs that are on the side of the road because of all the fumes and everything from the traffic that's going past there. So you can often find it on the side of the road, but it's also can be easily confused with cat's claw because they do look very similar. So audience, just get onto Google and do dandelion versus cat's claw, and you'll see, I've got some books with beautiful images of both side by side where you can see how you can easily mistake one for the other. Cat's claw has kind of the leaves are furry, and that's the easiest point of difference. The leaves are furry. Dandelion leaves are smooth. There's no fur, right? And it's cat's tongue. Is it cat's claw? It's cat's tongue. Oh, my gosh.
Cat's ear, I think you're talking about.
Cat's ear. That's the one. Yeah. Cat's ear, which I always think of cat's tongue because it's furry like a cat's tongue. And so that's how I normally, when my brain's functioning better, I remember the name, right? The furry cat's tongue. But then it's cat ear. So yeah, I always think cat's tongue. And so that's a really easy way if you don't really need to know the names. You can just remember, Ruth said the cat's tongue is furry. That's not dandelion. That's the cat one, right? Not for cats, just cat in the name. And so the dandelion has the smooth leaf. But yeah, another one as well is marshmallow. I love marshmallow because it's such a healing plant. Like, one of the main actions of marshmallow is demulcent. And for those of you who don't know what's a herbal action, that's the way the herb works in the body. It's the action that the herb does, right? And herbs have several actions. This is one of the other reasons why I love herbs is like they're not a single focus. They can have 5, 10, 20, 50 actions, right?
Yeah.
But one of the main ones in marshmallow is demulcent. And demulcent means that it's soothing and protective of the mucous membranes. So marshmallow really can help in like urinary conditions, in digestive conditions where there's been scarring or inflammation. And so if you think of like a urinary tract infection, or if there's like urinary stones, that can cause scarring along the membranes, the soft tissues of the urinary tract. So marshmallow root can come in and heal those mucous membranes in the urinary tract, can heal those mucous membranes in the gastrointestinal tract. And so that is a herb that I do use quite a lot because, humans are coming to me for their animals' conditions that have, that inflammation or that damage to the mucous membranes. And who have we got here? Hello.
We have Jen nearly always turns up somewhere in a podcast episode to say hello and help out. If you're listening, you won't be able to see her, but she's just jumped up on my knee and being all cuddly and lovely.
She's beautiful. Maybe she's like, oh, I like marshmallow too.
She's been probably out there eating self-selecting herbs and grasses out of our garden, I would say.
Yeah, good girl.
So
they're two, like I could go on and on and on about my favorites, but they're the first two that always come to mind. Oh, I just remembered another one that always comes to mind, ashwagandha.
Oh, ashwagandhas are
Yeah,
absolute
I use it a lot in
beautiful,
my
beautiful herb.
practice. Yeah, any kind of, again, that's a plant that does so many things, most commonly known for its support on the nervous system.
Yeah.
And it's not a herb that has a really overpowerful taste, and it's gentle in its action, but is still very effective. And so that's one of the reasons why I do use it a lot. I take it myself as well, for nervous system support, but it's also immune support. There are so many. I'm just trying to visualize my spreadsheet where I've got all of this stuff listed. That it does so many wonderful things. But yeah, I'd say they're my top three, and not necessarily in any order. Dandelion, marshmallow,
They're the ones that
ashwagandha.
come up. So now a lot of people take herbs these days. Herbal medicine and supplements are something that has, we all used to take them, and then Western science kind of took over and we forgot about them. And there's a big kind of renaissance in natural medicine, herbal medicine. So a lot of people might be taking milk thistle or echinacea, or I could probably think of dandelion or ashwagandha or maca powder or whatever. There's a lot of different things that people might take. So when it comes to what herbs are safe for people, how does that compare to dogs and cats? Are there any things that are safe for people that might not be safe for dogs and not safe for cats?
If we're just doing a generalization, it mostly comes down to dosage. Unless you're looking, like when you mentioned maca, I also thought, because I often combine the two, I also thought cacao, but then I was like, well, we're not going to give our pets cacao, right?
No.
So that's an example, right, where the plant is safe for, because cacao is plant medicine as well, right? It's a plant.
Absolutely.
So, whereas cacao is beautiful, beautiful, beautiful heart medicine and so many other things as well. That would be a very clear example. Great for us, not great for them. But I'm just thinking of what I have. Could I give all of that stuff to my animals? Yeah, I could, except, like I said, except for the cacao. Even maca has a place, like so nutritionally rich maca, right? But mostly, it just comes down to the dosage when we're looking at it from a generalized perspective, because obviously we've got the individual circumstances that might mean that it's not appropriate, right?
And there is the occasional herb that can be kind of really toxic for dogs and not for humans. And I was looking at a particular CBD hemp extract that had other herbs in it called Sleepy Time, that had some relaxing herbs in it. It had hops in it. You can't give hops. Hops is very toxic for dogs.
Yeah,
and
so I don't use hops in my practice because it's not one of those. It's also not readily available, because mostly I only use organic herbs. So it's not as readily available, but that's a good example of one. But then also that when you read the literature, and you're reading cautions, like the literature on veterinary herbal medicine, there are mention of certain herbs where they might say there's a certain belief, or that this is toxic, but there's actually there's no evidence to actually prove that claim.
Yeah.
So it's always like looking at those things with a grain of salt, because there's not always certainty. And so, always for like practitioners, but also for pet parents themselves, is like, but mostly for practitioners, it's kind of like, just because something is regarded in the mainstream as toxic doesn't mean that it is. You've got to go beneath that. You've got to look at, well, what actually is the research? What does it say? Was it just, was it legitimate research? Was it done on a wide enough, was the study wide enough? or was it just a potential? And was it potential in a specific circumstance? It's not so easy to just say, well, this is, across the board, this is toxic, right? There are some things where, another one, of course, is like, well, foxglove, but that's also toxic for humans.
Well, digitalis, foxglove, absolutely, it's toxic at the wrong dose. And I suppose that gets into the whole thing that what's the difference between a poison and a medicine, right? And nearly always it's the amount that you give.
And that's what I mean. Like, it comes most of the time, it just comes down to dosage. Like, a lot of that research as well, where they've said this is toxic, is because they've used ridiculous amounts, right? Like, it's like the study on garlic. We can talk about garlic because garlic is also a herb. Almost every single client where they've seen in my wellness plans garlic, they're like, but isn't garlic toxic? No. And then I tell them about, the study that was done, and they used ridiculous amounts of garlic. Like, you're not going to go and give a whole bulb of garlic to your dog. That's just crazy.
No, you're not. And I think another thing that I'm always really sensitive to and think about a lot, and this also plays into adverse reactions from pharmaceutical drugs, is you've got a bell curve of sensitivity or a normal distribution of sensitivity to any kind of active ingredient, whether it's herbal or whatever. And if you have a dog right on the super sensitive end, then what might be a beautiful therapeutic dose for the mean or the median or whatever could actually be fatally toxic for a dog that's got an extreme sensitivity in that natural distribution here.
Exactly. And that's whether it's pharmaceutical or that can happen with the natural too, and happens. And I would say it mostly, the herb that would most likely occur, and based on what I've seen in my experience, is turmeric. There can be quite a sensitive in those ovids or in those extra sensitive animals. Turmeric can be contraindicated for them, or we need to give a lower dose. Just because they're having a reaction won't necessarily mean it's not an option for them at all. And this brings up another interesting point as well, as like dosage is individual.
Yes.
Right? So there's a wide range. For a lot of herbs, you can have the dosage for animals can range from 50 milligrams to 500 milligrams per kilo of body weight, right? Whereas sometimes it can be a much shorter. It can only be 100 to 250 of I'm talking about therapeutic dosing, right?
Oh, well, that's when you get the whole therapeutic index, which is basically the range of safety of amount per kilogram.
Exactly. But, you could have a dog or a cat that's fine on that top range. I never recommend top range. I've never needed to. But then you could have an animal who only needs the lowest dose, and that's all they need, because their body is assimilating that so well. And so there is an art in dosage, and that's why it's like, you buy a supplement, says this is the dosage. Oh, my dog had a reaction, because your dog's an individual, and that's a generic product for a generic market. Like, that's where when you work with a professional, even if you're using a generic product, they can go, well, I know your dog, so I think you should give 50% or 25% of that dosage,
Do you think that that you would need to use a lower dose rate of herbs that are organically or biodynamically grown compared to ones that are grown with the more industrial type farming?
It's an interesting question, because then it brings up, does the exposure to toxins decrease the efficacy of the plant, or does it just make it dirty? Like dirty in that it's, has...
as it's contaminated,
because it's contaminated. I don't know. And this comes back to the argument that has existed forever, as long as, since organic food started to become popularized. There is still that school of thought that there is no difference between the health benefits of organic and non-organic foods. It just, this is the trade, and, but then you've also got genetic modification, right? So that brings a whole other layer of it, whereas properly organic food, there is no genetic modification. The food is the way nature intended. That's why it's not perfect. That's why that carrot looks like it's got a twin, they're together. They're like, or lumps and bumps, and it's not a perfect because it hasn't been genetically modified, right? So there is imperfection in nature, and that's a beautiful lesson as well. Total sidetrack, but I always think of it when I'm in the bush and nature's so messy. Give yourself permission to be messy like nature, because actually that's perfect.
And when you get to understand chaos mathematics and stuff, you realize that all harmony arises out of chaotic processes anyway, as a natural function of energetics and reality. But,
balance and polarity.
When I go shopping for veggies here at Castlemaine, our local town, we've got a beautiful place that has an organic section and a conventional section.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed is that all the conventional produce is about twice the size of the organic produce.
Yes. Yeah.
And I honestly, I can't eat conventional veggies and fruit anymore because the flavor and the intensity and the life force is so anemic in the conventional. I just can't do it.
Yeah. And so you can correlate that with herbs because they're all plants, right? They're not different just because one is a tomato and one is a dandelion, right? So, I think for me, and then that's partly, my choice in when I'm making herbal products for my clients' animals and for myself and for my animals, because of my stance on organic and as close to nature as possible. But that's so important to me. So when I'm creating those products for my clients' animals, that carries through, right? Because my underlying belief is that organic is better because it's cleaner. And there is certainly, I cannot say it with any guarantees or any hardcore evidence to back it up, but it's more like, for me, my feeling is because it's cleaner, it's probably going to be more therapeutic. It also hasn't, because it hasn't had, if you think about the nature of those sprays, like most of the time we talk, let's park genetic modification for the moment. When we talk about the sprays, it's like, the pesticide, the fungicide sprays.
Yeah.
They are designed to kill, to destroy, right? So is it a possibility that while it's killing and destroying the pests, it's also killing and destroying part of the nature, part of the vitality of the plant itself, therefore affecting the therapeutic nature of it?
I reckon my personal take on this is that it's a vitality and a life force difference between organics and biodynamics and, wildcrafted, though there are some ethical concerns with wildcrafted herbs too.
Definitely.
That can be a problem. Slippery elm and what's the other one? The Japanese one that they love for vitality. I can't remember the name, but might come to me in a minute. One of the roots that they use extensively in Chinese medicine that is almost extinct in the wild as well.
Is it knotweed?
No. There's no
problem. Just randomly, I don't even use.
There's plenty of knotweed. It might pop into my head in a minute.
Yeah, I've got another one in my head as well. That's often.
But I think it's vitality, and for me, you and I both work with energy.
Golden seal, Western herbs one, but that's also one that's
one of them. But there are a number of herbs that are starting to frankincense, and sandalwood are other ones that are becoming very, and Palo Santo. There's a number of different plants that there's immense pressure on that ethically. We probably should be finding a way to grow them more organically and sustainably in a more kind of cultured way than in the wild, because they
are doing that with golden seal. And so it's when you're sourcing those herbs, it's just, that's one of those things to check is how is this grown? Where is this grown? Is this, if it is wildcrafted, is it, we shouldn't be choosing this for this particular herb because it's so damaged. So, there's all those other factors as well that come into play. But definitely with the life force and the vitality, like I 100% agree with you, because like I said, it's like those chemicals are designed to kill. And so whilst they're designed to kill the plant, the pest, I still think it's killing part of that life force of the plant.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you. And, also pumping them up with fertilizers also dilutes life force and damages the integrity of the animal. It's a bit like pumping up a weightlifter on steroids, right? Their muscles get bigger, but it damages their systems in different ways. And I thought of the name. Ginseng is the other one that's
of course, ginseng.
Very heavily harvested in the wild, and it's sort of, you got to have ethical considerations too.
Definitely, yeah. And luckily,
So,
because there are so many herbs, we can substitute, like slippery elm, marshmallow. Is it marshmallow? In certain
yeah,
aspect of it, marshmallow can be used in place of slippery elm. Psyllium is another
psyllium
one.
husk.
Yeah. So, and
Um,
you can also see it in the pricing. Like that's one of the reasons why slippery elm is so expensive, because it's not as readily available as other plants, because it is.
Absolutely. So, are there any kinds of herbs or plants that you think are great to have growing in your plant for your pets to self-select if they want to?
Yeah, like I love nettle.
Nettle?
Uh, Nettle, yeah, yeah. I love alfalfa,
Uh-huh.
uh, chickweed.
Chickweed?
Hello, dandelion.
Dandelion, of course. Is your
Like,
favourite one?
yeah, go against the grain, people, and actually cultivate dandelion yourself.
Yeah.
you know, um, nettle, alfalfa, chickweed, dandelion. I'm actually thinking of doing a course next year on like pets, herbs for pets, just for daily wellness, and how to actually, if you want to grow them yourself, and also how to use them and dosages and stuff like that. But there's some of the, and it'll probably include at least 3 of those. But yeah, alfalfa, chickweed, nettle, they're, they're very safe herbs, they're very gentle herbs. Even just, and also, I mean, my cats love lemongrass. They absolutely die for lemongrass.
Okay. And
Um,
lemongrass is kind
yeah,
of
and which I
hardy
always,
and
it's very hardy. And even with that lemon scent, like it's not a true lemon scent. But I never thought that my cats would. And it was by accident that I discovered, like because I often will get them different types of grasses to have on the deck, as well as, if they can't be bothered walking down into the garden to eat the grass there. But, it was by accident I had lemongrass and they went to that versus the cat grass or the cat mint. And I was like, shit, that's surprising, because it's also quite spiky.
yeah, it is.
Lemon.
It's quite a tough
Yeah, I know. So
fiber kind
whenever
of
I get
plant.
it, it doesn't last very long at all. So you can go and you
And
can also get cat grass, catnip. I mean, catnip, but cat mint. All those beautiful grasses are available. And, that's also a common myth as well, that, oh my God, there's something wrong with my dog or my cat because they're eating grass, and
no, no,
it's
no, not at
natural
all.
instinctual behavior. It can be a sign that something's up if they're eating more than they normally are. And that's where observation and getting to know your animal is really important, because you'll know what their, you know, normal eating habit is when it comes to grass, and you'll identify, are they eating more today? Well, yeah, they are. Doesn't mean you need to rush them off to the vet. I might get in trouble for saying this, but not necessarily. Like, it could literally be that they've gone and eaten something they shouldn't, and they just kind of clear it out because they instinctually know that the grass is a purgative.
Oh, look, I reckon dogs and cats, vomiting for dogs and cats is a bit like burping for us. And I think occasional vomit, I don't worry about at all. I just think that's
Yeah.
just, they
It's if
can,
it's happening. And especially if there's a lot of grass in their vomit. Like, it happens with mine. They'll overdose.
oh,
Like,
absolutely. And
eating too
in
much
the
grass today,
wild,
guys.
in the wild, dogs regurgitate for their puppies. So it's a very
Yeah.
easy, much more common thing for dogs than humans vomiting, I think.
Yeah.
Um, and
Mm.
can you, all the other kind of culinary herbs, could you have them in the house as well in case
Oh
the
yeah, I
animals
mean,
wanted to eat one?
have turmeric, but be careful that you're not giving too much that they get diarrhea. I always say start small. Start with the smallest, a tiny little pinch as well, because turmeric can also create a palatability issue. If you put too much turmeric in, your dog and your cat's not going to eat their dinner, right?
Yeah.
So start really, really small. You common things like that most people will have in their pantry, right? Like oregano, basil, thyme. Thyme is so is oregano, beautiful, beautiful antimicrobial.
Yeah.
Can also help with parasite prevention, antifungal. Just thinking what other herbs I have, like in my spices: oregano, basil, thyme. Like, even when we're talking about alfalfa, if you're buying the sprouts, unfortunately most alfalfa is conventionally grown. I have a friend who started I was over at her house the other day, and she started sprouting. Like, she just buys like organic alfalfa seeds, organic fenugreek, organic fennel, like all kinds of seeds. And she started sprouting. She's like, Ruth, it's so easy. I'm like, I love alfalfa, but I never buy it because it's really difficult, if not impossible,
it's
to get organic.
super easy to sprout those things, and that's something that you can absolutely add into your pet's diet for vitality, minerals, vitamins, all sorts of goodness in sprouts.
Yeah, and so it's like, it doesn't have to be, yes, it's very easily and convenient to buy those dried herbs, but again, you can buy like the sprouted versions, like the alfalfa. But yeah, don't buy the conventional because they are heavily sprayed alfalfa. Get online, order some organic alfalfa seeds. You literally get a little, like a sprout. You can just get cheesecloth, wrap them in there, soak it, refresh that water like 2 or 3 times a day, and then you'll see magic happen. The seeds will start sprouting. You can have it in your salads. You can give it to your animals. Beautiful, high nutrient source of food, right? And really affordable if you're just getting the seeds,
Absolutely. Okay, so we're coming to the end of this conversation, which has been fascinating. Thanks for sharing your wisdom with us today. And we always finish with a couple of questions. So what do you think is humanity's biggest blind spot when it comes to your work and our shared journey of healing and evolution on this planet?
First of all, that it even exists. The amount of people that have found me and said, I didn't even know that there was such a thing as an animal naturopath. If I'd known about you, I would have contacted you years ago. And often that comes from a place of sadness because they've lost a pet. And it's like, if I'd known about you, then I could have done all of this stuff that I'm doing for my animal with you now for that animal. And then it's like, well, you knew you had the information that you were supposed to have at that time. So don't beat yourself up about it. You were meant to I was meant to come into your environment now, like huge learnings for you. And now you've got all this information to go forward. So that's the first thing, is that people like us even exist, right? The next thing is that, it's not as difficult as people, and I will say standard vets and pet industry, as they put forward of how difficult it is to care for your animals in this way. Like anything, when you start something new, it can be a bit of a challenge because it's new and you're going through a learning process. But once you've learned it, it just becomes second nature. And the easiest example of that is feeding, the food that you feed. Like, going from a kibble diet to a fresh food diet is a big change. If you're just buying the food, it's not such a big change. But if you want to explore making the food and doing that properly, then that's a big change. Just opening that kibble bag to, oh my God, now I've got to prepare their food. Massive change, big learning curve. I've been through it. I went through it years and years and years ago, and it was just as difficult for me then as it's going to be for anyone, right? Like, I was going to say I'm no expert. Well, I am now, but back then I wasn't, right? I'd started my studies, but I wouldn't have hold myself out as an expert back then. But now for me, it's so easy. And then you've got all the positive benefits that outweigh that disgusting opening that bag and feeding that processed dead food, right? So it's not as hard as the pet industry, as standard vets tell you that it is. So that would be the second thing. And coming to that is like, it's really accessible, and that we can personalize the treatment for your animal when we're using things like herbs. I have some generic products that I sell just for to help with detoxification and things like that. It does have beautiful dandelion in there. But I also, most of the herbal medicines that I make are personalized, right? So I get all the information about the animal and I tailor it exactly to what I see that animal needs. And that's something that, going and just buying a drug, that's never going to give you that personalized medicine, right? So I'd say that's probably like a third thing, is like, you can really tailor this. You can really tailor natural foods, natural medicines to your animal that you can't do in a way with the pharmaceuticals. But it all just comes down to, there is another way of caring your pets, and it's not as hard as everyone says it is.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And last question, what is the change that you want to be and inspire others to be in this world that we share?
Well, part of it you could say everything that I just said to answer your other question, that it's not as hard as most people think it is. The other thing as well, though, is more of like a general animal perspective, is that it's not just about our cats and dogs. Every single animal matters. And having that awareness and that understanding and that respect for the inherent value of all animals in all existence, whether they're considered to be pests or what have you, they are all here for a reason. They all have their own individual inherent value. And if you ask me, the world would be a horrible place without animals. I don't think I'd want to be here if there weren't non-human animals. Like,
no, I hear you.
Yeah, so it really just is, every animal matters, every life matters.
Beautiful. Well, Ruth, thank you so much for coming on and exploring the power of herbs, which is immense. And I would encourage you
Every
all.
plant matters.
Every plant matters. Every living
energy form.
Every living energy in the whole universe. So you're an animal naturopath. You help people with individual sessions. I think you have training programs and things like that. So where can people find you if they're curious about learning more and maybe working with you?
Yeah, the best place, the main hub is my website, ruthhatten.com. Really easy as long as you get the spelling right. But even if you just Google my name, you'll find it. And then there's a blog there. I've also got a podcast. I've got social media too, but you'll find all of that information on the website.
And it's Ruth Hatten, Hatten. So you've got the spelling, so you can get there easily. .com, not .com.au.
Just .com, yeah. Because I work with people like all over the world. So
yeah. Beautiful. Well, it's been awesome having you on. Been really interesting, far-ranging conversation. Have a beautiful day. Make sure you give your dogs a pat for me, and all the listeners out there, if you could please give your pets a pat for both of us, that'd be lovely.
Yes, please.
We'll see you all in the next episode.
Thank you.
Just taking a short little break from the actual podcast itself. Thanks so much for listening. I just wanted to let you know that I have a modality, whole energy body balance, that I've created over 28 years of working with all kinds of animals with all kinds of problems. And if you want to learn how to get your beautiful hands on your pets to find and heal their silent pain, anxiety and trauma, or if you would like to wake up your intuitive perception and learn how to use energy healing to find and heal all kinds of problems and distresses and traumas in your pets' energy systems, then pop into wholeenergybodybalance.com. We've got home and practitioner programs so you can learn either to help your pets or you can get certified and build a beautiful business out playing with dogs and cats all day. It's a stack of fun. And now we'll head back to the podcast.